Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Walk Show podcast, where we explore the walk of life. This is your host, Walker Neer. As always, the music for today's show is provided by Misha Zarin, so thank you so much, Misha. This week, we are joined by a very special guest joining us all the way from Shanghai, China. Coach Colin Thompson started in Toronto, moved to the U.S. when he was a child, and eventually moved to China when he was in his 30s. Coach Colin is currently a life coach working to motivate and inspire people to change their lives for the better. Colin also happens to be black, which, given the variety of places and countries he has lived in, gives him a truly unique perspective on race in America. With all the protests going on in the country, conversations about race and racism are incredibly important right now. In our conversation, Colin shares his insights and to his thoughts on the civil rights movement and how it compares to what's going on now, as well as how things in America compare to how things go in China. Make sure and stick around toward the end of our conversation, as Colin talks about some really great opportunities for people to get coaching. Colin has teamed up with dozens of coaches from around the world to offer free coaching sessions. These aren't free in air quotes, where they're really just trying to get you to sit down for a sales pitch. Instead, Colin and his colleagues are offering genuine coaching sessions to people free of charge. I've openly talked about my own experiences with coaching and strongly recommend it to any and everybody. I can't be more grateful to Colin for his time and willingness to make the time zone difference work, joining us all the way from China. I also just really love the conversation that we had, and I think you will too. So without further ado, let's get on to the conversation with Colin. Welcome to the Walk Show podcast. Coach Colin Thompson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Walker, it is great to be here. I always like it, I get introduced by Coach Colin Thompson. Sounds good.
It does. So Colin, you and I were actually introduced through a mutual friend of ours, Carolyn Owens. I was actually just recently on her show on a live stream that she did. Have you been a guest on her show as well?
Yes, about 2 weeks ago.
Cool. Well, I do just want to give a quick shout out to Carolyn Owens. She does a lot of great work as a coach herself and has a really interesting show. CarolynOwens360.com is where you can find that. But just wanted to give a quick shout out to Carolyn because she's the person that kind of orchestrated this meeting.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because she's she's the kind of person that says, you know what, I'm going to have you on my podcast. I'm going to let you share your story. I'm going to ask you questions that help people understand who you are. And I'm going to reach out to my friends and network to see how they can help you as well. So, you know, when you have people like that, as you just did, you want to give them shout outs and I say thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Carolyn's great. So Colin, you have a a pretty interesting story, and one that, I'll be perfectly honest, we could start almost anywhere. You're originally from Canada, is that correct?
Toronto, Canada.
Okay. And then moved to the United States for a while?
Yeah, well, I moved from Toronto, Canada to Louisville, Kentucky. And if you can imagine, that was quite a how'd I put it? That was quite, some people say a mind fuck, but that was quite a transition, especially being an 8-year-old boy. And it's funny because, well, it's funny now because there was challenges because my parents are Jamaican, my family's Jamaican. So I didn't have a Jamaican accent, but I had a Canadian accent. And then you move to Louisville, Kentucky, which is more of a country twang-ish, more of a Midwestern, not Southern, but Midwestern accent. So the moment I got to Kentucky, they put me in speech class because I was, I had more of a northern, North Dakota, Toronto, Canadian accent. I did have a lisp and a stutter. And they said, you know what, you sound kind of strange. So, yeah. So my first introduction to the U.S. was on an interesting side, was being put into a certain class, and also the first time being told we couldn't go to certain neighborhoods, right? Yeah. So that whole transition to the U.S. is very much like how people view life in the U.S. now, right? There are different boundaries, definitely sides. So that was an interesting transition.
Well, and I don't. So, if you don't mind, what time frame was this that you moved to the U.S.?
1980.
Okay.
1980. So I was almost 8 years old when I moved to the U.S.
Huh. And so then you lived in the United States for a period of time.
Yes, I was in the U.S. from 8 years old to about 34. So
Oh,
do the
okay.
math there for a long time, long time. And let me say, I love the United States. You know, my
Sure.
family's there. I grew up there. I am not a citizen. I'm a Canadian citizen. It's interesting. I'm an immigrant to the U.S. Literally. My parents are as
All
well.
right.
So a lot of the rhetoric in the U.S. about not building walls, but a lot of rhetoric about keeping America for Americans is sort of missed on me, even though all my nieces and nephews and siblings are citizens. So it's interesting there. But
Hmm.
I left the U.S. in 2008 and have been here in
Okay.
China ever since.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So then you eventually moved to China, and where at in China are you
Now
staying?
I'm in Shanghai. I was in Shenzhen before, and Shenzhen is the southernmost part of China, which is the manufacturing hub. That's where Foxconn is located. That's where all of the electronics are coming from out of Shenzhen. And now I'm in Shanghai, which is, I guess, one of the most international, diverse cities in the world.
Yeah, I actually had a friend of mine come on the show a couple of months ago now, probably to talk about her
Right.
experiences living in Shanghai, kind of as the pandemic broke out. And yeah, I wasn't aware that it was as big as it is. I mean, I think she said like 25 million people or something. I mean, it's like
Yes.
it's crazy.
Well, I would say 25 million people. It really swells to about 30 million. There are a
Wow.
lot of people. There are a lot of. First of all, there are a lot of people in every Chinese city. Let me first say that. But there are a lot
Right.
of people here, and you get used to it. When you go back to the U.S. to visit, and things are so spread out, and people are more. It's not as dense. You really enjoy the fact you're not bumping into people as you walk down the street. But as busy as Shanghai is, I tell you, Hong Kong is crazy because Hong Kong is only about 8 million, 10 million people, but it's so small that you're literally on top of each other. So Shanghai, at least we have a little more space here, but it's a great time.
Well, I'm originally and still from Springfield, Missouri,
Mm.
which is a town of about 180,000. So
Wow. Wow.
5 or 10 million doesn't sound small to me, uh, but I get your point. Uh,
And I heard that podcast with your friend. A very good interview. She had some great stories to share.
yeah, well, thank you. Yeah. She was a terrific guest and very generous with her time. Um, so over in China, then you have built a coaching business. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, two businesses: a coaching business and a blockchain business. And it's an interesting story how the coaching business was started. Um, should I take you through that journey, that story?
Yes, please. Yes.
So I have to go way back to when I going back to the story when I first moved to the U.S. because being put into that speech class. I mean, literally, they put me into a LD, a learning disability class, because of the way I
Mhm.
talked and spelling. I didn't spell the right way. I put OUs where I shouldn't be putting OUs, things like that. And back
Mm.
then, there wasn't a lot of understanding for Jamaican Canadian families in that education structure. If you didn't, fit that sort of square peg, you're going to be in a special class. So what's interesting though is a year later they told me that I tested out. I tested into advanced class, so I don't know how accurate that was. Um, so anyway, but me being put in that speech class, what happens is every day you have to leave class when they go into English part. You have to leave class, go into a special little class around the corner. The dunce hat. So I was embarrassed on a daily basis having to leave my new classmates, go into
Wow.
that special class, and that drove me. I really started looking at people who could, because when it happens to you, no matter what, you think that your speaking sucks, right? You think that you believe it. You say, okay, you know what, I do have a problem, and that starts becoming more weight on your shoulders. Now, from that
Mm.
point on, I always looked at people who could speak clearly, speak loudly, who could go into the front of an audience and talk, and people would react. At the time, only place I saw that really was in church. If a pastor up there
Mm.
talking clearly and getting everybody riled up, it was wonderful. So for years and years, I really sought on how to not just improve my speech, but become a public speaker,
Mm.
and really to avoid the embarrassment, or get over the fact that I had that lisp, I had that stuttering, and it took me. I still have my lisp, and I still do stutter, but I've learned to embrace those things. And I remember, my father, very proud, old-fashioned Jamaican guy. We went to a lot of family weddings, and every time we'd go to a family wedding, he would stand up when it came speech time. He stood up and say, "On behalf of the Thompson family, we want to thank you for yada yada yada." And I was always like, "Wow, look at my father standing up with the microphone, 100 people, and just talking loud." My father was a very loud, calm talker, so I always had that desire in me to now not just speak clearly and publicly, but to inspire people, to get people to take action. So that's when I really started to start thinking about motivating people. And luckily, I was a fairly good high school athlete, the captain of my wrestling team, the captain of my football team, and the coach would always tell us, "Get in there and get your team ready. Get your team ready." And that meant talking to some guys. In football, you have a lot of us, so other folks can get folks ready. But in wrestling, there's not a lot of us. And you have to really go down the line and get people motivated, especially people who don't have that, freshmen, sophomores who don't have that confidence yet. How do you get them motivated and to believe in themselves, especially when they've lost 10 times in a row? So learning how to motivate people really became my thing. As I went to university in Washington, D.C. at Howard University. At Howard, it's academic school. And let me say, I only got into Howard because of sports. I got a wrestling scholarship. I would not have qualified if not for that. So shout out to Howard University, and shout out to my wrestling coach. Because my wrestling coach, Paul Cotton, he always said, "You're here for an education. Okay? We're paying you to wrestle, but the first priority is to graduate." And he always hammered that home with us. So with that, at Howard, the nature of Howard is it's an academic school, so you're forced to have leadership roles. So there at Howard, I really got into my motivating people and learning how to speak in public. Luckily, not luckily, but I was actually the commencement speaker in my senior class graduation. Yeah, so going from being put in a special class in 1980 to 1995, standing in front of my fellow seniors, giving them advice on how to live their life after graduation, even though I had no idea myself on how to do that. Yeah,
you hadn't done it
yet. Hadn't done that yet. But I'm going to bring this back to coaching.
Sure.
What I found, even after I graduated, for years and years, people would always come up to me to help them get motivated or for inspiration. And I got pretty good at that. And what I was doing was giving them advice. So for years and years, I would do that, and I never knew the term coaching. I giving advice and helping, and Les Brown, Jim Rohn, some people who I listened to the audio tapes over and over and over and over and over again for two reasons. One, to get that lesson, to get the lesson that they're teaching on how to improve your life, how to go forward, how to really have a life by design. But two, and for me most importantly, how to speak, how to motivate people, how to inspire people. And I took those things and I really tried to design my life there. Now, that doesn't pay bills. That wasn't paying bills at all because I wasn't doing it professionally. So I was working for Ernst & Young, Howard University, and then IBM. And IBM brought me to China in 2008, which is how I came to China. I'm going to fast forward now to 2015. I was asked to do some volunteer coaching within IBM. At the time, it was called Blue Core Coaching, where they'll give you about a 4 or 5 months training, and then you go coach leaders and individuals within IBM. And it's very interesting because up to that point, I had been sort of what I call a motivator, an inspirer. But the coaching, I think, gave me that last missing piece of the puzzle. And I'll tell you what I mean. Walker, I'll tell you what, you give me 15 minutes with you, I can inspire you, motivate you to run through a wall, right? I hope you wouldn't do it because it would hurt, but I can motivate you like crazy. On Monday, you're motivated. On Monday night, you're motivated. You're calling your friends, telling them how motivated you are. Your life has changed, yada, yada, yada. Tuesday, you still got it. Wednesday, but Thursday, Friday, you're back to doing the regular thing. Your motivation is gone. What coaching does, though, coaching was that piece that was missing, because coaching is that relationship between yourself and a client that keeps them going. So then it's not so much about motivation, maybe some inspiration, motivation in the beginning, but that's not what's pulling you along. you're not, it's not the motivation, it's not the inspiration. It's you and a coach working together until you've reached your goal. So to me, that was like a major eye opener. And luckily, within IBM, after I was doing that volunteer coaching for a while, I was asked to join a coaching team within IBM, and that was a great experience because that really just put me in a position on a daily basis to help people improve their lives and reach their goals. Now, it's interesting because at that time it was individual leadership coaching and group coaching, which meant that the number one priority was the company's end, right? Not the company's end, excuse me, but the company's success. So we're coaching individuals, but it's more of how can they be coached to help the company, which I found to be, it was okay, but I'm not a purist, but I felt a little off because if I knew an employee was in a bad situation, I could not really I could not help them to discover the best solution. I had to tie it back to the company. So sometimes I didn't feel like I was, helping as much. So I decided, when IBM gave me an option of moving to Beijing or finding another role, I decided to tell my wife it's time for me to go it alone. And luckily, this is very important for entrepreneurs, when you tell your spouse that you're leaving your job that's been giving you a paycheck for years and years and years to not know when the paycheck is going to come, it's very important for the spouse to say, go for it. Very important. Yeah.
Need that buy-in.
Yeah, absolutely. So she gave me that buy-in. And it's been I would say a great journey for the last 2 years. That's about a little over 2 years ago. It's been a great journey, and now we're in a position where we're really helping a lot of people. And I'll come back to what we did during the COVID times, because I was in China during the outbreak, and the whole coaching situation changed. But at the time, that was secondary to keeping your family safe. So I'll come back to that when you want to come back to that. But the coaching we do now is we call it life coaching. Under life coaching, there's an umbrella of different areas. I specialize in self-improvement, self-development. This is when you really have some things in your life that you really want to improve upon. Perhaps how you maintain relationships, your ability to have more confidence in yourself, your ability to be more productive in that area. Also, I do career coaching, which I think is one of the most important aspects of coaching, because most people, I'll tell you a statistic, most people have heart attacks on Monday mornings. Do you know? Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yes. Yes, because they're going back to their jobs that they don't like. And people spend so much time doing things and doing career they don't like. So to me, career coaching is one of the most important aspects of coaching, because we spend so much time working. And imagine you're doing something you feel appreciated about and you're getting paid for it, as opposed to getting paid for something where you're not feeling good. It changes the mindset, and it changes how you look at work and your career. And the final area that I was coaching in, I say it was because it's on hold now, is what we call expat or relocation coaching. Here in Shanghai, we have a lot of foreigners coming in from different countries for work, and it's hard sometimes to make that transition for spouses and the individuals when they move here. So I coach people on how to make the most of their time here in Shanghai. However, as you know, as of right now, foreigners are not allowed to travel into China. So a lot of foreigners got caught out of China. So that aspect of coaching is on hold right now. But that will come back, because the borders at one point I hope will open back up.
Sure. So the folks that you're coaching mostly, are they people? I mean, obviously the expats when that was still going on, would have been there, but are the people largely clients based locally there, or are you talking to people from other parts of the world too?
Yeah, it's about 80%. Initially, it was about 80% located here in China, and I would say a mix down the line of Chinese citizens versus foreigners. Due to the coronavirus, COVID-19, it's now, I would say, a mix of about 50-50 down the middle, people who are in China versus people who are outside of China.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny how so many things that we used to think we had to do in person, like as soon as COVID showed up, then we learned that hey, it turns out we've got webcams and microphones, and
Right.
we can do a lot of this stuff, in a way that we couldn't before.
Yeah.
Um,
And we were doing our coaching. We were doing our coaching before, primarily through camera.
Okay.
The reason being, a lot of people are getting coached in the evenings, and they're more comfortable getting coached while they're at home from work and whatnot. So that wasn't a big change. But I'll tell you, the change was now trying to, I guess you could say marketing towards people who are outside of China, which is what which is what myself, a lot of other coaches started doing more, trying to get more clients, get more branding outside of China.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm kind of going off in a random direction, but I'm just curious. I mean, as someone who's lived I guess really Canada, you were a pretty young kid. Have you been back to Toronto at all as an adult?
Yes. Well, last time I was in Toronto was probably maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
10 years ago. And I don't want to go back yet, because if I go back now, it means I'm going for a funeral. So I'd rather not go back anytime soon.
Sure.
And yeah, but I have very fond memories of Canada. So I do know Canada quite well.
Yeah, well. So you're just someone who has a unique perspective on kind of, America from kind of an outside perspective, or a more objective perspective, because you didn't start here, right? And then now going to China, going there with kind of an outside perspective, but then still having a similar perspective to America, although also having lived here. I mean, how would you compare them? And I'm not trying to elicit any bad statement about China or anything like that, but I'm just curious. I mean, there's a lot of common, I think, probably misconceptions about what it's like to live in China. How would you explain the differences, or maybe the similarities?
Yeah, let me first say, my father used to always tell us, we're citizens of the world. I try to get as much experience living in different cultures, having people in your circle that have different views. So I sought out people who were different from me, who had strange accents. Luckily, in university, we had a lot of Caribbean, a lot of African students there as well, to learn from them. Oh, and you're right. My first, I guess, my first contrast feeling, again, was when I moved to the U.S. from Canada, because things were just so different. What that did, that gave me a perspective of, well, there could be a different way that it's done, but this isn't so different from a lot of other immigrants to the U.S. You have a lot of people, a lot of families in the U.S. from China, from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, from Trinidad, from different parts of Africa, from Europe, and when their parents moved to the U.S., within that household, that culture is that country. So you can still grow, you can still, be born in the U.S. and have a different perspective, because inside that house, you're not eating apple pie, American apple pie, right?
Right.
You're eating the dessert of your home country. Your parents are talking in their mother tongue, or with their accent. So you're still getting that.
Right.
You can still get the contrast. I think what's different, though, is being in the U.S., once you leave your household, you conform automatically to the environment. So even though inside the house, you may speak one language, or you may have a Jamaican accent, but when you go to school, you're speaking with your Louisville, with your Missouri accent, right? So that's one.
Right.
And I did, growing up in the U.S., I never felt like I was African American, and I'll explain that. I was born in Canada, so
Right.
African American is for literally United States Americans, right? United Americans.
Yes.
So in that checkbox, for a lot of years, when you have what they call those blind surveys at work,
Yep.
and I would check the other box, and they're not supposed to know who filled out what survey. And they come back and say, "Colin, you haven't done your survey yet." I'm like, so I call myself black, right? And I think that's a
Right.
better term because if I call myself black, that's all black people globally, right? Which
Right.
is really my group. So that's one thing. And I think I'm getting off tangent here, but I'm going to bring.
Oh, you're good.
So growing up in the U.S., I never, a lot of African Americans talk about their grandparents down south and this and that, and I could never be part of the conversation because my grandparents were in Jamaica, and to a lot of Americans, whether you're Caucasian or whether you're black, it's America first, then outsiders. So I was in a lot of circles. I was viewed as a foreigner, even though I grew up there and whatnot. And I said,
Right.
I said that because when I moved to China, it changed, right? Because I had American accent, I was American.
Mm.
No
longer a prefix.
Just American. And I can tell you, when I came to China and seeing the culture shock was immense. So I went to college in Washington, D.C., and I moved to D.C. in 1991, and I stayed in D.C. until 2006. And Washington, D.C., the DMV area, the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, it's very black. It's very black. I think it's one of the Maryland area is one of the most populated African American counties in the country. So, we grew up I like to say we grew up in a black environment. And then I moved to Poughkeepsie, New York for IBM. And Poughkeepsie is upstate, not upstate, it's maybe about an hour and a half north of New York City. And I went from being in a very diverse environment to one where I was, again, one of the only blacks there. But what that did, that prepared me for China. Yeah, so looking back now, that was very good because it got me out of my comfort zone, and it made me be more open to communicating with people who maybe I wouldn't have had a conversation with before.
Right.
So in China, what happened was, if you see another, and this is 12 years ago, which is different than how China is now. If you saw a foreigner 12 years ago, you cross the street and you say hello. Because in Shenzhen, there just weren't that many of us. So you start to say, you know what, I don't care where you're from. I don't care if you're from, the southern part of the U.S. I don't care if you're white, black, purple. If you talk like me, if we can talk about sports, if we can talk about common shows, you're my new best friend, right? So back then, you had two bases of foreigners in Shenzhen. You had those of us who worked for international companies such as manufacturing, IBM, maybe some mobile phone companies and whatnot. And then you had international teachers. And teachers were actually, there are more teachers in China than I think any other industry, because a lot of international, when you have somebody come from the US or Europe to work in China, the kids need to go to international school. They can't go to local school. So you had a lot of international teachers then and now. So they were always a good resource to spend time with. Now, the down part there is every 2-3 years they have turnover there. So after a while you say, you know what, I don't know if I want to necessarily make deep friendships here, but they're going to be gone next year. But getting back to your question about the culture differences,
sure.
Yeah, what I learned the most about being in China was that the narrative of how people of color are viewed in the U.S. is mainly a U.S. and maybe a European thing. Meaning, in the U.S., and I'm going to just be honest with you, in U.S., people of color, and especially the darker color, are viewed more as guilty than anything else. A lot of times, people feel threatened by black people a lot of times in the U.S. strictly because of their skin color, strictly because of stereotypes. This is the stereotype, or this is the story of how black people act or should be viewed in the U.S. Whereas when you go to China, they don't have the history. A lot of Chinese didn't even know about slavery. I mean, they do now in bigger cities, right? But it's not part of their everyday. What they knew was Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dr. Martin Luther King. So they knew about those famous African Americans or blacks, and when they met you, they're more curious. Now, you get tired of people coming to you and touching your skin and touching your hair and asking for a picture. You get tired of that, but you understand
Right.
it's not from a place of it's from ignorance, not a place of any sort of animosity or trying to make fun of you. And it took me about 2 years to get used to it because I get tired of walking down the street, somebody see me, take my picture. I said, I'm not an animal in a cage, right? I'm a black guy.
Right.
But my friend explained to me, Colin, some of these people come from small villages, small towns. They've never ever seen somebody black. So once I understood that it wasn't from the same place that it would have been back in the U.S. This is from more curiosity and ignorance. It helped me calm down a lot because I'll tell you what, I've never ever feared of getting injured or shot or anything here in China. If I hear the police siren, I know for a fact they're not coming for me, right? Which is a very interesting thing because in the U.S., it's a totally different experience. And I think that the Chinese people here, they still may think most black people are from Africa. And I love that. I love that part because we are from Africa. So, but they won't think that you're a criminal. They won't think you're a crook. They may just think maybe you're poor from a poor country because Africa is still viewed as a poor country. So they may think that you're coming from a poor country. They'll think you are well educated though, right? But if I contrast that to the U.S., where when I go back to the U.S. and as my plane is landing, I get tense. I get, and my wife is Chinese, and I tell her, honey, when we get down here are the rules for us being back in the U.S. Right here.
Wow.
Yes, here's how you act, and here's how you act with the what's it called not the police but the guards when you go through the
TSA, the security people.
Well, the not TSA, because TSA checks you into the airplane. When it comes into the country, immigration, right? Here's how you act, right? When we get out of here, if you ever see a police car or a policeman and we get pulled over, here's how you act. And these are things I go through it with her each and every time we get back to the U.S. And now we have a baby boy, and I tell her all the time, you have to be aware of what you have here, right? In China, you have a cute boy. They love mixed babies here. Okay, they love mixed babies here. But in the U.S., he's viewed as a possible weapon. He is viewed as a weapon. Him as a weapon, not anything he has on him. And I help to educate her on the reality of that. And sadly, what's taking place over the last, I would say, years, but what's taking place more vividly over the last 8 months has shown her what I'm talking about. Because I always sit her down and have her watch the video to show her what I mean, and she's finally starting to get it. So going back going way back to the original question.
Yeah, you're good, man.
I feel extremely free here, and this isn't just my feeling. A lot of brothers and sisters, we get together and we talk here, and we're shocked by how we talk about PTSD, right? Post-traumatic slavery disorder, and how when we get here, we don't have, every black person has PTSD in the U.S. It's a fact. When we get here, we feel just so calm, so relaxed, and it's sad that we know the moment we get back to the U.S., it's the same old, where we have to be careful where we go, what we say, and it's a heavy burden. So a lot of folks don't really like going back, but we definitely feel free here. Now, let me be honest with you. There are some things that aren't right here in China as far as racial relationships, but compared to the U.S., for example, I know a lot of people tell me when they're going for jobs as teachers, they'll send in their resume. They'll say they'll do the initial on phone interview. It's great. When they go for the first face-to-face interview, they'll say sorry, they want a white teacher, right? Because in a lot of ways, they'll be honest. In a lot of ways, a lot of Chinese parents want their kids to learn American English, and to them, to be American is to be white. Now, understand, in China, everybody is Chinese. Every Chinese citizen is Chinese. You will not find a non-Chinese person as a citizen. I think there's two, actually. Just two. Stefan Marbury and another Indian guy. That's it.
Yeah.
Literally. So in their view, if a country has one race, right? If you're Indian from India, you look Indian. If you're from Africa, you're black, you look black. If you're American from the United States, you are white. So when they go for those jobs for American English, they expect somebody white. And they'll say, you know what, we can't hire you because parents want to have a white teacher. Now that has changed over the years, so it's not as bad. But let me tell you, Walker, that sort of racism, we had that every day in the U.S. That's small, that's easy racism, okay? Right?
Yeah, no one's got a gun on the end of that.
Right, that's easy racism. I mean, back in high school or middle school, when they're voting for office, right? Who's going to be the class, the class treasurer, this or that? Come on, we knew we weren't getting those positions. So we're used to that part, right? I call that easy racism. But the heavier racism, we don't have that here in China, and it is wonderful. But it makes it hard to come back to the U.S.
It's so fascinating to hear that. Because the rhetoric here for the majority of my life, which is why I was really excited to talk to Katie Callahan, who I talked to a few months ago, and then to talk to yourself as well, is that there's this rhetoric in the U.S. that, like, all of our songs tell you it's the land of the free, right? So freedom is a uniquely American thing. And China is this like scary totalitarian place that's like 1984, that Orwell book. And I kind of was starting to gather on my own that wasn't the case. And then I have conversations like this with you, or again, like I did with Katie Callahan, where it's the opposite. And again, not like you said, it's not like everything there is perfect in every way and that there's nothing that could be better or something like that. But it's not at all that what it's claimed to be, what it's made out to be. It's actually just people. I think I said this to Katie too. It's actually just largely people living their lives.
Yeah. And let me say that I have, again, Shanghai being a very culturally diverse city, I have friends from so many different countries in Africa. I have a lot of friends from different parts of China, and their biggest goal in the world is to get to the United States, because the United States is viewed as the land of milk and honey. The United States is viewed as somewhere. A friend of mine from Rwanda, he always tells me, Colin, no matter what job you have, you can buy a house in America. And you know what? He is kind of right. It may not be the best house, but you can buy a house. But in China, no way. In China, no way. In his home country, no way. So to a lot of people, America is still the land of milk and honey. In China, for a lot of Chinese people, in the United States, you can complain. Right? You can complain. You can't complain here in China. So it depends on your background. I know my wife tells me she's Chinese all the time. And my Chinese friends, they do have a problem with things here in China. I think being foreigners here, I am sort of shielded away from the problem because, typically the foreigners who come to China are coming here to add value to China. Meaning we're going here for corporate jobs, coming here to teach, we're coming here to really help China become more culturally diverse. So we're not going through some of the same issues that Chinese people are going through on a daily basis. So for them, China is a yoke, right? For them, China is perhaps not the best place. I'll give you a good example. For years, my ex-colleagues at IBM, one by one, they're moving to Australia and Canada. And I'd ask them, why is everybody moving? And they'd say, well, here's the practical reason. Their children, education, pressure. So in China, I wouldn't hear kids, I mean now, but before COVID, I wouldn't hear kids playing outside because after school, the Chinese kids go to additional learning, art class, piano class, something. On the weekends, they spend all day in some sort of violin, advanced math, all day learning. Why? Well, because in China, everything is about your future, the kid's future. And if these kids don't do something to have a leg up on their classmates, they won't make it. So if everybody's trying to get a leg up, then nobody is out playing and having fun. It also means that the parents, after they go from work, they must sit with the kids and help them with their art study, whatever it is. So the parents are feeling a lot of pressure to keep up. And of course, art classes aren't free, piano classes aren't free. So parents are feeling a lot of pressure to have to keep up. Then they said, if we go to Australia or if we go to Canada, it's different. The teachers will say, give your kids a little homework, but make sure they get outside and interact and have fun. Whereas in China, it's not about fun. It's just about that. So so for a lot of Chinese people, they have a different view, and I think I know for a fact that what's going on with the structure, government structure, they feel heavy. But as foreigners, we're treated very good here. So I think we have a different view and a different experience than a lot of locals do.
That makes sense. Well, it's yeah, that's so interesting to hear you talk about when you come back to the United States, that there's just literally a tension. So, and I don't mean to keep comparing everything to China. It's just, I don't know that much about it. So it's very interesting to me. But so like here in America, I mean, I'm a white guy, so I don't have the same fear of the police that I think some of my black friends do, but I'm still not comfortable with the police. Like, so when I get pulled over, the first thing I do is shut the car off, put the keys on the steering wheel, roll the window down, hands at 10 and 2, yes sir, no sir, the whole thing, right? Like I'm playing the game the whole time too, because when it comes to the American police, I don't think every American police officer is a bad actor, to be clear. I think the vast majority of them are not. But you just don't know who you're dealing with, because I don't know this person yet. And the truth is that it, like, they can just kind of say something happened, and did it happen or not? I don't know. But a court will decide later, and then that court is probably going to believe the cop, right? So there's this tension. Is it not like that? Like in China, if you get pulled over, are you not hands at 10 and 2 and keys on the steering wheel and all that? Is it not that same experience?
Yeah, well, let me say, I don't drive here in China, which is great. I don't drive here in China, but the police here are more, in this culture of China, they want to resolve things. So they'll typically try to resolve things without having to go back to the police station. For most traffic violations, they get a ticket. So I haven't been involved in many traffic violations here, so I can't really speak on that. But I want to go back to your scenario in the U.S. We follow that same scenario, except for two things. We'll instantly call somebody on the phone and say, hey, I'm being pulled over, and keep it on speaker, right? If I am, we'll do that. And if anybody else is in the car, we'll tell them, shut the fuck up and don't say anything. Seriously. Don't say, do not talk to the police officer. If he asks you a question, answer it, and don't have any attitude. But collectively, when that happens, in the back of our mind is, okay, we're about to get fucked over. And what that means is maybe not arrested, maybe not hit, but he's going to ask questions that maybe he wouldn't ask you. I mean, and I expect answers. So 3 of y'all going tonight, we don't have to tell him that. But if we don't tell him that, you have a problem? Get out the car. So we have to make sure that we are keeping things very, very calm. We have to ask questions that typically we don't have to, we would not need to answer. So it's I think it is a different experience being pulled over and being singled out. I mean, now in the U.S., you have a lot of people who are checking black folk. What are you doing here? Why are you here? But here's the thing, Walker. For a lot of people, this is not new. The only difference is now it's on video. This has always happened. It's on video. And you mentioned before that this is a lot of protests because of George Floyd. Nah, this is not because of George Floyd. He just delayed it. This is George Floyd was a tipping point. This is Breonna Carter, Ahmaud Arbery. We can go back a few years. I mean, there are so many different instances that this is just not just about one person.
That's a very fair statement. I mean, I was astonished years ago when the Eric Garner situation happened, where we watched a man get strangled to death on camera, and not only did no one in the present moment do anything to help the guy, but then nothing happened as a result of it. It just, I think actually the only people that got arrested immediately were the people who filmed it, if I remember correctly. And then, just to fast forward a few years and see literally the exact same phrase being uttered while yet another person is killed by the police. The "I can't breathe." It's shocking. And I guess to your point, maybe it shouldn't be, right? And to be fair,
it should be shocking.
Okay. Well, so on Netflix, kind of a weird angle, but it's like on Netflix they have this special now about Waco, Texas in the 90s. Where are you familiar with that situation?
Yes.
Okay, so anyone that's not, just go look it up. David Koresh in the 90s. But anyway, the ATF eventually, or FBI, whoever, raids his complex and kills people. And I guess this new special that's out on Netflix really angles it, or really like tries to illustrate how badly mishandled and how horrible the government did at responding to the situation, which is fair. Like I don't dispute that at all. But I had a friend come to me and tell me, he was like, I can't believe, he's like, I'm so like worked up right now. I can't believe the US government did something like that. And I was like, I mean, I don't mean to be dismissive, man, but you realize that the United States government was founded by slave owners, right? Like this shit didn't start like with people being nice to each other and then slowly went off the rails. Like it started off the rails and kind of hasn't ever come back. I didn't say this. I mean, obviously it's probably kind of evident. And I'll add it to the intro at the beginning of the show, but I mean, we're recording this on June 2nd in 2020, right in the midst of the riots all across the United States, and then also in some places around the world, really about kind of racial inequality, racial injustice, those sorts of things. So in China, I mean, you mentioned what your experience was like as a foreigner there, but are there these kinds of racial or ethnic, I don't even know what word to use, disputes is too calm, but problems in China, like among people, like the native peoples there? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I'll answer like this. If there was, we'd never know about it. Okay. So right now in the US, I could make a sign on a piece of paper on a poster board that says, I hate, not the government, I hate my neighbor. I hate you, neighbor. And I could put it on and walk down the street back and forth in front of my house or one neighbor's house. In China, you can't do that. That is disturbing the public welfare. So you can't do that. You can't have any sort of public display of emotion, feeling. you can't do that. That's against the law. So you wouldn't know about that. Also, you wouldn't hear about that. They do play clips of what's taking place in the U.S. But if that sort, first of all, there are some riots here. I know a few years ago they were doing a little riot in front of Foxconn, but they'll squash it so quickly, and they'll make sure that no video goes on the news. If they find video online, then whoever posts that video is done. So they're very, very good at protecting what they think is their center, the government and whatnot. So you won't see that. You know, again, protest and whatnot is illegal in China. It's legal in Hong Kong for a little while longer, but not in mainland China. So you don't know about those sort of things. And also, just looking at COVID, one of the challenges that we had in the early time of COVID was we didn't know the real news within China. If you look at the numbers tell you that it's impossible that a country of 1.5 billion people only had 30,000 cases and only about 3,000 died. So you don't know what's taking place. But people here have been so used to this way of life that they keep it moving. You know, we don't know what's going on, but just keep it moving. So it does work, so to speak.
So, I mean, what do you, and just totally spitballing here, but I mean, what do you think an outcome could be from this that would actually affect positive change? Because the protests are there, the riots are there, and clearly there is a long-standing problem that's not been addressed ever. But like when I'm thinking about it, like I don't know what, this is a conversation I've had with some friends recently. Like I don't know what, like in the 60s, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of rambling. In the 60s when we had like the civil rights movement, and I'm not trying to simplify it to just sitting in a restaurant, but for example, like there's a group of people not allowed in a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
All they want to do is sit in the restaurant just like anyone else can. And so there's a very tangible, like, now you're in the restaurant and you're not supposed to be. And so that's the protest. And now at some point you're allowed to be in the restaurant. And so there's this tangible difference that we can see in the what you have access
Right.
to. Right. But so now fast forward 40, 50 years, what now would be an example of that kind of tangible difference that we could see?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I listened to your previous podcast. You were talking to a gentleman who's a comedian, and you had a statement saying pretty much the same thing, that from the protest, you don't know what's going to be the takeaway from the protest. And
Yeah.
one of the things that is challenging for I want to say more than just people of color. One thing that's challenging is, what are we trying to accomplish here?
Yes.
Because as he said, during the civil rights movement, we were trying to get laws either changed or laws made, right? So things happen now. There's no black water fountain, white water fountain. We can vote, right? We can be part of the process now. But now today, we're finding that these same laws and other laws are geared against black people or are geared for non-black people. So what are we actually protesting for? And I think a lot of black people will have an individual answer to this. Let me first say that the major difference, in my opinion, the major difference between what took place in the 60s and what's taking place now. In the 60s, we had this, I'm going to use this term, and I hope you can understand what this means. We had black leaders. Now, we have people who are black who may be in leadership positions, but I would not say that they are black leaders.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to clarify, just to make sure I'm kind of following along. So I grew up, I was born in 83. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And like, I remember back in the 80s when I was a real young kid, like Jesse Jackson being someone who was like an example of a black leader. And maybe even to some extent, like Al Sharpton used to be.
Absolutely.
Okay. And like Louis Farrakhan is another example maybe of someone.
Yes.
So I'm familiar with those names, but those seem to be characters that now aren't viewed with that same, I don't know, gravity. I don't know what word to use, but the same seriousness as they were back then.
Well, the challenge is, once people who aren't given opportunity, once they don't have opportunity, everybody's fighting together. Once some of those at the top get opportunity, their priorities change. It goes from, and I'll give you a 2020 example. Now, a lot of black voices, they will come out and be very upset, very pissed off about what's taking place, but they won't go as far as they should go. They will have a message, but they won't sacrifice, because they know if they really share what they feel, what they're going through, they may lose some of their followers. They may lose some of their contracts, some of their sponsors. So now it's more, not political, it's more of, I want to help, but I don't want to fuck up what I got, which is very different, because what you're showing is you're not willing to sacrifice. And, for example, LeBron James had a very good tweet last week. And I think LeBron James is a great basketball player, a great role model. I think he is a great role model. I don't view him as a pioneer and a black leader for the movement, right? And I want to be very careful how I say it, because again, I think he's a great role model. I think the narrative is that for black people now in 2020, our leaders must be entertainers. Our leaders must be musicians. They must be athletes. Where are the doctors? Where are the lawyers? Where are the people who have been in the political system for years? Where are those leaders? And those are leaders that we need. People who have relationships in the federal system. People who can help us understand what we need to do. Right now, we have all these protests taking place throughout the United States, but who is on TV saying, I represent the Black voice, right? I'm leading the Black voice. It's absent. But again, go back a few years ago, we had Jesse Jackson up there. We had those leaders up there. And let me say one thing that is very different. Two things that are different about this protest. One, Black people are sort of taking a step back. They're not rioting as much as people think we are. We're seeing that these are other rogue agents, so to speak, that are doing like real damage, the spray painting, the breaking the windows. And people are seeing now that, yes, we can riot peacefully. And two, for the first time in a long time, we have sustained support from non-Black individuals. So for the longest time, if things happen to Black people, and it's only Black people who are protesting, who are getting upset, nothing's going to happen. But now I can say that we have more Caucasian, more white people who are staying in the fight, who are being loud, who are being vocal. And very sad to say, there are more prominent white people who are more willing to say F this, and not worry about their endorsements than a lot of Black people who are more worried about their endorsements. And that's fine, because right now the main thing is to get that support from the majority. And the Black people we are not the majority in the U.S. So I think that's two things that are very different from this protest. We're getting a lot of support from the Caucasian, the white side, which I think will really carry a lot of the weight. So I don't know what the outcome will be, but I know that, white people don't let things go, right? It's a meeting. They will say, no, we got to get some change here. What change is coming? So I think that's something that's different. That's good.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. It's something that I have struggled with trying to understand most of my life. Obviously, I live in Springfield, Missouri, like I said earlier, which is a very small town. But like growing up, I mean, my three closest friends were a guy who's Filipino, a guy who's Black, and a guy who's I think like Arabic and Japanese, or I don't know. But like, so in this whitest of white places, I still managed to actually end up finding a somewhat diverse group, as diverse as we could get here. And it's just so shocking to me that it still is something that people carry with them in the way that they do. And an argument I've made in the past about racism and sexism and really all forms of bigotry and stereotyping like that is that even outside of the cruelty of it all, which that is the worst part of it, so I'm not trying to downplay that, but even outside of the cruelty of it all, it actually just doesn't make any sense. Like if I want to judge the character of people, which all people do, and you have to do when you interact with individuals, right? You have to be able to make some assessment of, is this safe? Is this dangerous? Are they nice? Are they mean? Whatever it is. So if I want to be able to accurately judge the people that I'm around, then you're going to have to make quick judgments on people because you're not going to get to know everyone right at all times. Right? It doesn't make sense that you would use a metric, I'll call it, being skin color in this case, to determine those things because it's not accurate. There's way too many examples of people of all, again, genders, races, everything that fit every different personality type that you could come up with that I don't understand. I don't understand just from a self-serving interest, why you would use a criteria that doesn't actually work. Like when you make these broad stereotypes about the character of people based on, again, things that actually are totally independent of their character, you're actually just doing a disservice to yourself. And again, that's not even to speak to the cruelty and all of that of it. I don't know. It's just, it's something that I just struggle with understanding even the premise of it.
Well, I think it works. So it worked. I mean, having that mentality have brought America to where it is now, and meaning that it's a strong country. It is. You have the majority there for a reason, right? So I think sowing that discord or having those stereotypes and using skin color or where you're from as a way to judge people I think that absolutely has worked, and that's how you have that majority power in the U.S. But I'll share one thing with you that I found very interesting. So, yeah, as you mentioned, your best friends were Filipino, black, and the other Japanese Iranian guy. Uh, so now, I think, and again, I'm speaking for me, and I can share what my friends and I talk about, but I want to make sure these are my comments. As a black man, I'm 46 years old. I totally recognize that not all Caucasians in Europe or in the United States are bad people. If you go back, say 5 years ago, and there was some sort of issue in the U.S., we would say, you know what, F all white people. We're tired of this. We're tired of this, because back then the white people, I said the white people, white people were more unified as a white group. Now, when Trump came in as president, what that did for the first time, you saw a divide between white people. So when we see go back 5 years ago, when you see a racist cop, or that's a white racist cop, that's how white people are. Go back 2 years ago, see the same thing. Now it's more of, well, that's a white racist cop. He's a Trump supporter. He's a Trump cop. So what it caused us to do, because at the same time, a lot of white people were so upset over some Trump stuff. We never saw that before. Yeah, some people didn't like Bush's policies, but not like what we saw for Trump. So a lot of go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say a lot of the Bush stuff was like anti-war stuff, right? It wasn't really domestically that anyone really had huge problems. But with Trump, I mean, you've got people super pissed about domestic policies. Anyway,
and what we saw was, wait a second, you're telling me that there are some white people that don't like this, that don't have the same thought process that these guys have. So instantly, we started seeing the Trump white people and the non-Trump white people. Now, at the time, the non-Trump white people were still quiet when things happened. Right? So we'd say, okay, you know what? We have Eric Garner. The Trump white people were, well, he should have been selling cigarettes on the corner illegally, right? He should have been doing that. Whatever. The non-Trump white people didn't say anything. But now we're seeing that the non-Trump white people are saying, wait, this is ridiculous. So now we're starting to see that there is a force that is fighting for justice and equality within the white community, which is very new. So I say it to say that don't think all black people have issues, because we don't. We see it now as the Trump type of white and the non-Trump white. So we do think that now we have a better opportunity, because, again, as I said, once you have white people or Caucasians who have your back verbally, I mean out in public, you're more than likely to succeed.
Yeah, the Trump phenomenon is so shocking, because there's people who that I know and love, and they're genuinely nice, kind people. Like, they're not. I've never heard him say a crossword kind of thing, and then they voted for him, and I don't know. It's very confusing to understand. He's confusing because it's like the people who he's tricked into liking him are the people that should just absolutely oppose him. Like, if you're a poor white person, you should hate that guy. Like, he doesn't represent you in any way. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that's his biggest, strongest base. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. You say he tricked people. To us, it was like, duh, right? This is how America really is. Now you guys see it. Now you guys see what we're talking about for so long. People will tell you, man, this Trump guy, I'm not going to vote for him. And they go vote for him. And it tells you how they feel and they think in their hearts, right? Now, I'm not saying all of them are bad people, but it does show that there are people who are very nice people who you work with every day, but they do think that America is more of a country for how do I say this? For people who are here. They will say blacks, whites. And when it comes to Mexicans coming in, when it comes to from South America coming in, maybe not. When it comes to immigrants coming in, maybe not. So they'll accept blacks for being Americans, but that's about it. That's about it. So there are several different variations of what you call Trump supporters. But look, half of America voted for Trump. So it wasn't one or two people.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So for us, it would mark up like this is what we see on a daily basis, man.
Yeah, I was floored. I mean, I wasn't a fan of Bush whenever he was when he was president, and when Obama came, I was blown away that was the next choice, and eagerly supported Obama, and thought that like maybe we had turned a corner where like now that position was actually going to be held by people who are like respectable people, and then man, did I get kicked in the mouth. Like that was completely wrong. Like we went as hard the opposite direction as we possibly could have.
Well, in the black community right now, our biggest concern is what's going to happen next year when Trump wins the re-election, because quite frankly, and first of all, let me say this: I've never voted in the United States because I'm not a citizen. So
right.
So I have I do have a horse in the race, but I'm not directly involved in picking the next leader. But I think that Democrats did a terrible job of having somebody who people could rally around. So I was telling my wife last night that Joe Biden is just there's nothing interesting about him. So I think that Trump, when he does win, he's really going to just double down on everything. And luckily, that doubling down is going to make that divide between the Trump whites and the non-Trump whites even bigger. And I think so the people of color and the non-Trump whites will have an opportunity to work together. And Walker, let me ask you a question. I want to make sure I'm not offending you. As a black person, should I say white people or Caucasians?
Oh God,
doesn't matter.
I don't give a shit.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't matter,
Okay.
and it doesn't matter to me at all.
Okay.
Obviously, I don't represent everyone, but anyone who would say they have a problem with that, fuck them, because that's ridiculous.
Okay.
It's honestly, it's kind of like when people, it's different, but it's like there's the N word, right? That has a very, very cruel, storied history, and then there's I don't know how long it's been around, but I would guess a rather recent term of white trash, right? That people are called. And I've heard white people say, like, oh, well, that's the equivalent. It's like, it's not even kind of the equivalent. It's not even, doesn't even approach equivalency. So, no.
Yeah. Well, look, the term white trash in Louisville, Kentucky, anyway, was coined by white people.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Right.
It's the same in that way. Both were coined by white people.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's no, nothing that you've said is even approaching offensive at all.
Good.
No, I mean, it's I was talking to a buddy before we started recording this evening that it's as someone myself who sees myself as a white person that's an ally of not just black people, but again, minorities in general. Or once gay marriage got legalized, it kind of shifted the conversation about that here in America. But when homophobia used to be a lot more rampant, I had a friend a few years ago. I work, in technology, and I had a friend that's a female that started. And she really kind of exposed me to a lot of ways that she experiences sexism that I hadn't really understood. Like I didn't think that was nearly as prevalent as it is. And that's the thing too about, earlier when we were talking about kind of what are the tangible differences that we can see. That's the thing, is that I think that a lot of racism now, I think a lot of people who are racist now are not card carrying KKK members, right? Like they would never burn a cross in someone's yard. They would never drive down the street and yell the N-word. And maybe that's just out of fear. But I do think that there is a large segment of people who don't necessarily hold hatred in their hearts, but what they do hold are a large set of stereotypes and biases, some of which they might not even be consciously aware of that they have. And they think that that's not the same as racism, because they think that racism is only if you're willing to participate in a lynching or something crazy like that. It's like, no, it's making assumptions about character based on race, which has zero to do.
Right. It's interesting because as growing up in the United States and being Black, we always felt, well, we always were, I don't want to say comfortable, but when we see what we call overt racism, where you're seeing somebody's calling you the N-word, somebody's acting a certain way, we see it, we say, okay, you know what, we can see this. But you have hidden racism, and that's always been more dangerous. Hidden racism is you walk into a job with your resume in your hand, you know you're not getting that job. You know, once they see you, you're not getting that job. Hidden racism is your kids have a birthday party, everybody is invited except the Black kids. That's hidden racism. So, and that is just, you know, that's been there. That's, again, and I apologize for keep saying it's been there, but all of these things we're experiencing, it's been there for years. And as Black folks, man, we've dealt with this. And the problem is, not the problem, but if you think about what slavery did, slavery said for 400 years, you have to accept this being treated a certain way. Even after slavery, we had to accept being treated a certain way. If you go out and you see somebody Black being lynched, you couldn't do anything. You could not do anything. You had to accept it. So you're talking about the people who for years, hundreds of years, had to accept things, which is why we're not so quick to fight back now. Because part of it, even with the police, don't cause trouble. Don't cause trouble. Just deal with it. So you look at people, and that's one of the challenges we have now, is that we have been conditioned to accept bad treatment. We've been conditioned to not react, because the more you react, the more it becomes a problem, and it's more you're causing the problem. So, so it's a lot of things that we have to sort of overcome that we haven't been able to overcome. But I'll tell you one thing I'm very proud of. If you look at the protests now, as you mentioned earlier, it's all over the world, not just in the United States. And as you said, these people in Europe, in Paris, are protesting, and I don't know what their demands are. Right. so people are just rallying, and I wonder how much people are protesting for Black people versus protesting against Trump. So, but either way, it may not matter. The fact is that people are protesting, and I hope they're going to stay consistent. I hope the protests don't stop. But I don't know what. I haven't heard anybody in the U.S., outside the U.S., really have any demands that could actually be quantified and met, right? We want equal justice. What's that mean, though? How do you do that? You talked about this earlier. How do you do that? And internationally, stop what's taking place in the U.S. Okay, but what is it that we can do here, right? We can't put sanctions on the U.S. until, you know. So yeah, but I still do hope that the protests take place peacefully, and I hope that from this, like a phoenix, we get strong, real Black leadership, which we don't have now. Right now, we're just a lot of boats that are sailing, but not in one direction, not with one course in mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, so do you think that would Barack Obama be a candidate for someone that could maybe fill that void? I mean, he's not an entertainer, right? Like, he comes from a very academic, respectable, and obviously was the president twice. You know what I mean? So could he take up that mantle? And I guess I don't know how you ask someone to do that or how that manifests itself, but
that's a very, very good question. I would. Oh, that's a very good one. But why hasn't done it yet? You know, it's sort of like that. And I would say honestly, if I look at the fire that's needed and the strength that's needed, I would say I'd rather have Michelle Obama there, being that voice, right? Because Michelle Obama, she has what we call street cred, right? She is more, because she wasn't president, she can speak her mind a little more. I think Obama still has to make sure that he is very, and Obama's great, right? He has to be very mindful of what he says and how he does it. I think Michelle can really rally people around us. I think Michelle would be great. I think Obama would be great also. I don't see him as being, wow. Now you see, he's out of trouble now, because now I'm saying, why hasn't he done that, right? Why hasn't he done that?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think to some extent, and again, I'm speculating. He's never said anything, at least that I'm aware of. But I think to some extent, it's that anything he says in the existing climate, and I think the farther away from 2016 we get, the less true this becomes. But especially right after that, if he comes out full force against something, it could very easily, the narrative will quickly be it's sour grapes because of the political outcome, right? And I don't think that would be true, or that is his motivation. I don't think he's petty that way, but I think that's where the narrative gets spun. Now, I think as we get farther away from 2016 and that election result, I think maybe he has more bandwidth. I mean, he, in the commencement speech, he still didn't say Trump's name, I guess, but in the commencement speech that he filmed for local high schools or whatever, he did call out the lack of leadership, right, or the bad leadership that we had. So it's becoming a little more overt. But you're right. Michelle might be a much more, she might have an easier path to that because she doesn't have all of the history of, like you said, being president.
And Obama is very political. And if you look at, the black leaders, they have been more, apolitical, non-political. I forgot the proper term. So I think it's hard for him to come from that structure and be authentic and be able to sort of share the story of a lot of black people, right? We all know Obama's background. There's no, that's fine. But I think he's still sort of bound by certain constraints of what he can say and what he can't say. The last thing Obama wants to be viewed as is an angry black man. Because people think if you're an angry black man, you're no longer seeing with logic, you're seeing with fury. And there's one of the things that people in the U.S. fear of a black man, fear of an angry black man. So he does not want that. If you think about Dr. Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, you never saw them really getting angry. Frustrated, yes, not angry. Now Malcolm X, you saw him getting angry, right? But he had a different message. So
but white America terrified of that.
Yes. So. Yes. Yeah. But I'll tell you who I wonder where he is right now. Farrakhan. Where's Farrakhan? Farrakhan was a leader. I mean, especially after the Million Man March, what he did there. He's a leader that is respected in all corners of the black community. Now, some blacks may not be Muslim and may not agree with all of what the Muslims are saying, but they do respect Farrakhan. So I am wondering where he is right now. Maybe he's scared because he knows if he, how long will a black leader make it if they're really getting change, right? So maybe people just don't want to be put in that position because all the other black leaders have been killed just about.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a very, I mean, to be completely honest, I was, and I don't mean this flippantly, but I really was shocked that Obama survived his presidency. Like I thought for sure that if they didn't succeed, there would at least be a lot of it. I'm sure Secret Service shut the stuff down, but still, astonishing.
Because look, what was astonishing was him being elected president, right? That was astonishing. And I'll tell you the truth, man, go back 10 years, well, more than 10 years now, go back to 2007. And if my child or little nephew or little niece or any black kid said they want to be president, I would pat them on the head and say, you can be whatever you want. There ain't no way you're going to be president, be back in the United States. So to me and my friends, that was something that honestly, we never thought we'd see in our lives. Before I die, I want to see an alien. I believe that there are other life forms. And I believe that will happen. I would tell you that I will see an alien before you see a black president, right? So him making it, and again, making it 8 years, I think that is a testament to the United States. But I also think that, it's called course correction. And that's why you got Trump, right? That's why you got Trump.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
God, what a price.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah,
that at the end of the day, I think we'll course correct again, right? We'll course correct
yeah,
again, and there will be a lot of healing, and there will be some positive things to come out of this Trump time.
yeah. Yeah, I can still go back. I'll pull it up. I mean, not like every week or something. It's not that often, but once in a while, I'll go pull up on YouTube Obama's victory speech in 2008, where he says, change has come to America. Right. Man, I mean, even still, 12 years later, I mean, even now, just thinking about it, get goosebumps.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, it's just, it felt so exciting. I don't know. I hope we can get back to a time where that's what the president inspires in people. You know what I mean? Like a feeling of hope and excitement, and like, wow, maybe things could be better, maybe things could be different.
Yeah. But maybe you have to totally implode, right? Because again,
Yeah.
let's not be naive and think that there's no way Trump will win in November.
Oh,
right. Let's not be naive about that. So if he does,
100%.
Right. So if he does win, things are going to get worse. But maybe them getting worse will find people who want to really be true leaders, and that may. I mean, let's be honest. 4 years of negative to have 20 years of positive. Maybe it's worth it. I don't know, but I don't see anybody on the horizon now that's going to bring change or even challenge Trump. So we have to get ready for that, and we have to sort of hope that somebody from our community, black, white, person of color, doesn't matter, is really that inspiration. And I'll tell somebody a few days ago, where the hell is Al Gore? Where's Al Gore, right?
he's making that.
Yeah. Where's Al Gore, man? When we need him. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I was astonished that Joe Biden was the pick. And then, I mean, it's moment after moment. I mean, what was it, a week ago? He was on Breakfast Club with Charlemagne and told people that he doesn't know if they're black if they don't know about him. And it's just like, oh my God, dude, please stop.
Yeah, well, first of all, him being on that show was just, was just like, look at this PR. It was like when Hillary Clinton was introducing Meek Mill and Jay-Z at a rap contest, right? At a rap, it's like, really? Hillary Clinton talking about Meek Mill? What the heck is, what kind of, So.
Right. Yeah, it's very on the nose.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess we've been talking for quite a while. I mean, in your opinion, as a, I mean, and really this doesn't have to be just for white people, it's for anybody, but what do you think people should be doing on a day-to-day basis to continue helping this movement stay in the forefront and stay something that maintains its position in the national conversation, and actually contribute to what's going on?
Sad to say, I don't know, because again, as we talked about, sustained protest must be because we have some demands. There's something that we want. There's something we're fighting for, and fighting over something that already happened isn't going to be productive. We have to fight for something we want to happen in the future. So I don't know how sustained protests will work. I'm also concerned that what you're seeing is people coming together, and there's no, it's sort of like the coronavirus has been defeated, because now what's on people's mind is the protest. So looking at, how do we protest but still be wary of this virus that's wrecking the world? Because don't forget, the economy is going to take a hit, And the same people that are protesting or being impacted are losing jobs, don't have that income, are still at home. So we have to say, what can we do to establish a new normal? That new normal is first keeping your family and loved ones free from the coronavirus, or getting it and dealing with it and healing and being able to go forward. And also, what do we do with the the state of abuse that's happening in the U.S. And luckily, I'm so far away here in China that I don't need to have the answer because I don't know. But I will say, on an individual basis, I think that people need to not be scared to protest in their way. It doesn't mean you're on the streets protesting. It could be the fact that you're wearing a T-shirt with a slogan on it. It could be that you change your email tag or your social media tag to say a certain thing that shows you support. Because we have to let folks know that we are all rallying around this and we're not letting go. Also, we have to use the biggest weapon that we now have are our cell phones. We have to continue to video things. We have to continue to post things to let people know any incidents, whether it be a situation that's violent, or whether it be somebody uh, trying to call you for barbecuing in the wrong area, or somebody trying to call the police on you because you asked them to muzzle their dog. So we have to make sure that we're continuing to film things and let people who are being bad actors, let them know that you're going to be on blast. You're going to be on social media. You're going to lose your job. Your friends are going to start to distance themselves from you. Not we're going to ruin your life, but your life will be impacted from that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. And I didn't mean to frame that as like, hey, you're the one who's responsible for solving this. I was just curious as to what your thoughts were, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. And I've had other friends that I've talked to that say, I don't know what I should be doing. I'm feeling a lot of white guilt right now. And I don't think sitting around feeling sorry for yourself will help either. So I don't think that's the appropriate outcome.
Well, let me add this, and this is not a commercial or opportunity for me to commercialize, but this is a great time to get coaching. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you why, because people are feeling a certain way. You talked about white guilt. There's a lot of Black people who don't know how to feel. And I know in the Black community, people feel a certain way about getting counseling. Counseling maybe has a negative view to it, so people want to stay away from counseling. But not say, if you need counseling, get counseling. But also, this is a great time to get coaching. And this is what we did during COVID. So let me just go into this for a moment. So when COVID hit back in January, in January in China, I was in South China with my wife in her hometown, and she's from the country. When I say country, all your dinner is in the backyard. The chickens, the geese, the plants,
Right.
everything is in the backyard. So it's the country, and there's no mask or anything like that. The word came down about Wuhan. Within 24 hours, everybody had a mask on. My son was 5 months old at that time, and we decided, on our way to Hong Kong, we decided to go to the airport and come back to Shanghai because we didn't want to get caught outside of Shanghai. When we got back to Shanghai, and the thing about China is, if the government says, we think you guys should stay inside and don't go out, nobody goes out. That's it, right? There is no, it's my right. No, everybody will follow the regulations. So that was wonderful. But what we saw was, from a coaching standpoint, a lot of my clients said, Colin, I want to put a pin in coaching right now, because my first priority right now is not finding a job, is not understanding how I can better communicate with my friends, it's not working on improving my self-confidence, it's not being more productive. It is protecting my family from this new monster called coronavirus. Back then, it wasn't COVID-19 yet; it was still coronavirus.
Right.
And
Right.
and I agreed. My mindset was not on coaching, but my mindset at that point was very much on protecting my family, understanding more about what this thing is and how to keep it from coming into my house, and also protecting my wife, because she was watching news 24/7 and getting scared. But what was interesting, what we found was, a few days, weeks later, a lot of my old colleagues, clients, friends in the U.S. would call me and say, Colin, I'm going a little crazy because we're stuck in the house. I want to strangle my wife. I want to stab my husband. My kids are driving me crazy. So, right. So now they want to get coaching on how to maintain through this COVID time. And it was very interesting because what we learned was coaching was good, but a lot of folks from the U.S., and it's March, and by that time we had like 6 weeks of going through the COVID time here. So we knew two things. We knew how to keep your family safe and sort of how to keep your mind safe. At that time, folks from the U.S. were contacting me saying, Colin, what is this COVID thing? It's now coming to the U.S. What is this thing? Can you give us some tips on how to, disinfect ourselves, how to really stay safe? So what I did, I got tired of replying to emails every day, saying one by one. So I created some videos and put them on Facebook saying, look, one, our family's safe. Here's proof because you're in China. They don't know if you're telling the truth or not. So here's my family, right? Everybody is safe. Right. We're good. And also, here's some tips on how to protect the one place you can protect that's inside your house. Luckily, a production group asked me to do more public service announcements. So we agreed that I would do, I told them I wanted to do 30 messages over 30 days. So every day doing a different message. Now, that's a big commitment for one person. So I had a team of coaches that were originally here in China. I recruited 8 coaches to help get the message out. Now, the beautiful thing is all the coaches in China went through COVID. The coaches who went back to the U.S. went back for Chinese New Year and were stuck back in their countries, which was good because we had one in New York and one in North Carolina who could give the aspect of coaching from here's what's going on now. So from I believe it was April 1st to May 1st, every day we did like a 30-minute video giving tips and insights on how you can deal with COVID. And originally it was about COVID coaching. We call ourselves the COVID coaches. But after about a week, and I'll admit, when you have coaches who are relationship coaches, career coaches, happiness coaches, positive mindset coaches, personal development coaches, it's hard for them to focus on COVID because I told them, if the guys, they asked us to give COVID messages. So everything you say must be around COVID. And it was very difficult because all these lessons were not about COVID. They're about life, right? So for example, our relationship coach, if you and your spouse or you and your kids are having issues being locked in the house, well, those issues existed before COVID. Our COVID did was magnify them. So we changed our focus and we talked about how this is really more life coaching. So we're giving tips. And those tips really helped a lot of people to I say thrive through that COVID time. So I want to go back to your original question, which I got way off track. But I found that one of the best things people can do now is open up to the idea of coaching. But coaching can help you manage what you're going through. But more importantly, it can say, look, you're going to look back on this time 6 months from now, a year from now, and ask yourself, what did you do to get better? What did you do to learn? What did you do to make sure that when this is all over, you're not going back to the same lifestyle? You're going to a better lifestyle. And people are saying, look, I want things to go back to normal. Well, look, man, normal. You hated your job, right? You had issue with your spouse, right? You didn't have confidence. So no, man, you do not want to go back to how it was before. You want to get better. So after our 30 days, we asked ourselves, what can we do now to really, really help? Because remember, these videos were more messages. And I'll give you the URL for the video later, but these are more messages. We said, now, how can we do real coaching to help people? So we started another campaign, which is 40 for 40. So I recruited 40 life coaches, 40 life coaches globally, and each of them are volunteering at least 1 hour per week over 8 weeks. So we're doing this through the end of June. And this is absolutely free coaching, pro bono coaching for anybody who needs coaching. This is not sign up and we're going to try to sell you on coaching, trying to pitch you to buy a contract. No. Absolutely free. The coaches aren't selling anything. The coach's goal is to, in that hour time period, give you some help coach you through how to take actions to improve your life. The challenge we had is getting the the word out to people. So I'm hoping your platform, your podcast, folks listen to this, can just say, you know what, I may not know what coaching is or coaching is about, but sign up for a free session, talk to a coach, and see how the coach can really help improve your life. Because coaching is really just a partnership between a coach and a client, where we explore different avenues for the client and you to improve your life to reach your goals. So this is a wonderful program that, again, we have coaches in Europe, in South America, North America, Africa, wherever you are. We have coaches there that are waiting now to provide you with some free coaching support. So again, going back to what you were saying before about what can folks be doing now, I think getting some coaching, and again, it's totally free.
Yeah, no, that is great advice. I signed up with a coach maybe October, November of last year, and still work with her to this day. And it's been a tremendous value. And I like that you compared it to counseling, because you're right. People do have a stigma about counseling. And I think it's because they think that if they need to go see a counselor or a therapist, that it means that like they're conceding that something is like fundamentally wrong with them or something, which I don't agree with that assessment of seeing a counselor or therapist. But coaching, I don't think carries that same kind of stigma with it. But honestly, I mean, man, if you go see a psychologist that talks about cognitive behavioral therapy, which is just changing the way that you act, I think that there's a lot of similarities between that and what a coach is going to help you with. You know what I mean? Like they're not as far apart as people would think.
Right.
Like it's all about changing the way you interact with the world around you to feel better or perform better or whatever better.
Well, I think one of the main differences between coaching and counseling, or coaching and therapy, and a lot of times people ask us, what is coaching? They're really asking the question is, how is coaching different from therapy or counseling? The main difference as I see it is, when you go to a therapist or a counselor, we want to, and you're feeling a certain way, we want to understand and analyze why you feel like this. Maybe there's a situation in your childhood. We want to go back there. We want to analyze it. We want to help you to deal with it, to help you feel better from it, to help you understand how that impacts your life. With coaching, we will acknowledge that there's something from the past, but our focus is only on the future, right? We're not trained or equipped to help you deal with certain things. That's why counselors, you have a counselor therapist. Our focus is going forward. Everything about us is, what can we do to improve your life going forward? Where the counselor or therapist, they need to spend time going back to help you go through that. And again, if you need counseling, go see a trained, licensed counselor. For coaching, go see a certified coach, because we're focusing on the future. What can we do to improve your life going forward? Not so much about what got you here.
Yeah, I had another individual. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head now, but the distinguishment they drew between the two was that they said that counseling or therapy is more focused on trying to take something that you think is uncomfortable and figuring out how to make it comfortable, whereas coaching oftentimes is actually more about taking you out of somewhere that maybe is comfortable but isn't really getting you where you want to go, and putting you in somewhere that maybe is more uncomfortable, but equipping you with the tools and techniques and confidence to be in that uncomfortable space and still succeed.
Right.
So that was kind of an interesting way to distinguish the two ideas. But anyway, so that's a tremendous offering that you talked about. And so I went and watched the COVID coaches that you had talked about. You had sent me that link before we recorded, and I went and checked that out and thought that was a tremendous, wealth of information. But this thing you're talking about where people can sign up for a live coaching session, all around the world, what is the website for that?
www.oligye.com.
Okay.
/ COVID Coach Me. COVID Coach Me. And I'll give you two, because I want to take COVID out, because at some point that's going to have a negative connotation. So www.oligye.com/coach me.
Okay. Just dropping the COVID out of there.
Both will work, though. Both will work. And I got to say that, again, this is a tremendous opportunity to improve your life. And we take this very, very serious. And this came about because we know for a fact that the people who are on the front line, the doctors, the nurses, the delivery people, the people working in the supermarkets, the people working in the restaurants, the people who can't take time off, who are scared that they're bringing things back into their household. And when they get back home, their families sort of want to stay away because they may be sick. So those are frontline workers. We're focusing on the backline, people who are in the house, trying to make sure that they have all the support they need as well. So, I mean, we know for a fact that this is beneficial, and we look forward to coaching more people and helping them to improve their lives.
Yeah, no, well, I will definitely. You said this runs through the end of June?
At the very least, the end of June. Right now, we're trying to maintain it for as long as the need is there. The challenge we have is making sure that we're spreading the word. So the more we can promote it, the longer it'll stay in effect.
Cool. Well, I will make sure and promote it. I mean, I'll be happy to do it obviously as part of this episode, but even outside of that, for the rest of the month, I'll make sure and share and promote it, because it's hugely valuable. And I think that it's something that people don't understand, and that people think, oh, that's for other kinds of people, not for me, right, though. And it's just not the case. It literally has value for everyone. So that's pretty awesome.
Walker, let me add this. Excuse my French here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having the balls to be open for this sort of conversation, because it's not every day where you see a Caucasian or non-person of color or a white guy who's open to having this sort of direct conversation about some of the racial issues in the U.S. So I want to thank you for the platform, because I think our conversation here was very authentic. You didn't tell me stay away from this topic or that topic, and being able to share your thoughts and my thoughts in a very calm, open form is wonderful, because believe it or not, it's not that often when we're able to have this conversation without people butting heads and trying to prove their points and say, yeah, but. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I can't appreciate you enough for your time and your candor as well. I agree. I think it was a very open conversation, and one that hopefully people can listen to and maybe, recreate in their own lives, because it's so easy to demonize people, and not that there's not a lot of demons out there, but if you can actually get with people and have conversations, you can understand that people aren't motivated purely by evil all the time. Again, there are some, but not everyone. And there's got to be a way out of all of this. I mean, neither you or I had any concrete 100% answer, but at least we're trying. You know what I mean? At least we're trying. Yeah. And at least I would rather us say, you know what, I don't know for sure, but we should keep thinking about it, rather than come up with some bullshit answer that doesn't really work and doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, well, Coach Colin Thompson, thank you so much for coming on the show today and joining us all the way from Shanghai. You're very generous with your time. I will make sure and have the links to the videos and to the new coaching sessions in the show notes. Anything else that you wanted to touch on while we're still here?
Let me give you my website link, and you can navigate to my other platforms here, www.oligye.com. You can find my links to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can find all my links there. Go over there, check it out. And just to the listeners, I just want to say that these are some amazing times we're in. We are in the time of COVID. We're in the time of George Floyd, that sort of thing. Use this time to get better and to improve. Again, when we look back on this a year from now, we want to look at what did we actually learn? What was our mission? What was our purpose during this time? So try to find a purpose. Try not to get sucked up into the negative rhetoric of being scared. Try to really make sure that you are growing during this time. Thank you.
Business hands are changed fast. Another road that runs for gold. A ghost town's buried under dirt and glass. Windows broken, stories untold. Job the memories drift in the wind. Over signs dying in the grass. Mothers, fathers, and lifelong friends become layers of the mountains past. Castles came crashing down. And stone by stone they fell to the ground. Brick and mortar eaten by earth again. Their baby lanterns drifting into the wind. Families fled to the open plains, hot and handsome dirt and stone, and under the sun a turning gray. Fire and I weaved in the bone. Brick by brick they built their home. On the hill where ruins lie, generations walk those halls, and now the roof crumbles under the sky. The staircase came crashing down. Step by step they fell to the ground. No way to reach the top floor again. It's a paper ladder drifting into the wind. Kingdoms came crashing down. One by one they fell to the ground. No way to keep the stone walls within. Their baby lanterns drifting into the wind.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for the show today. Thank you so much again to Coach Colin Thompson for stopping by and having that conversation with us. Thank you again, as always, to Misha Zarens for providing the music. And, of course, thank you, listener, for listening to the episode. I invite you also to check out my other podcast, Pick Up Your Sticks. Pick Up Your Sticks is a podcast about why gaming matters. So instead of just talking about news, reviews, and current events in gaming, we really try and talk about the emotional connection that we've got with it and why it's important to us. So if you enjoy long-form conversations like you get on the Walk Show, and you also happen to enjoy video games, I definitely recommend you check out Pick Up Your Sticks, because I think it'll be right up your alley. Pick Up Your Sticks is available anywhere podcasts are found. As always, stay up. Have a good week.